Today, we talk about the green monster. Not that one. This one. If you're a pool owner, you're familiar with the threat of algae, either working to prevent it or fighting to get rid of it. We're going to help you understand your enemy a little bit better and make your quest for crystal clear water a whole lot easier. But first,
what is algae anyway?
It might surprise you to learn that algae aren't plants. Not exactly. Algae refers to a very large group of microorganisms with more than 75,000 species. Like plants, they produce oxygen, create their own food from sunlight. But unlike plants, they're made up of only one kind of tissue, more like bacteria. However, algae are eukaryotic.
Eukaryotic?
Eukaryotic.
Is it eukaryotic?
Or however you say that word. The fancy way of saying they have a nucleus. They're definitely not bacteria. The truth is, scientists don't fully know how to classify algae. We know they're living organisms, thrive in extreme climates, requiring moisture and sunlight. That's about it. It's this, along with a huge diversity of algae species, which makes such a challenge for pool owners. Fortunately, algae are almost always beneficial, so you're not really in any danger. Generally, we leave it alone. But when you're a pool owner, it does make your water look slimy and unappealing, unless you're a frog. And in rare cases, algae blooms can become toxic. Best way to deal with it is prevention.
But that's the challenge. There is no way to keep algae spores out of your pool. First of all, algae spores are so small you will never know how many are in your pool at any one time. If a single algae cell were as big as me, its spore would be about the size of a grain of sand. Second, they're everywhere. Spores can be introduced to the water from the soil, from the trees, from family pets, or from your bathing suit, even after it's been through the wash. Third, spores are incredibly tough. They can survive in tidal waters where they're exposed to extreme turbulence. It would be like you or me growing up in a perpetual earthquake. Some species live in the crushing depths of the ocean near toxic steam vents, and some survive in the Arctic, and some species just blow around in the wind, literally circling the globe before they find a place to bloom. I'm totally not kidding. But it's not as bad as all that. Not if you maintain your water balance. Testing your water and keeping a maintenance schedule are your most useful weapons.
It's important to keep your pH below 8. Not only does algae prefer levels above 8, but high pH lowers the effectiveness of your sanitizer by as much as 80%. Chlorine works best when your pH is between 7.2 and 7.6. In this range, your chlorine only needs to be around 3 parts per million, preventing algae from growing. Treating your water with algicide will also help prevent breakouts, and it's generally recommended that you plan a routine application every 2 weeks. There are products made to prevent algae. Some work differently than are designed to clean up a swampy pool. Keep your water moving as much as possible. Here in Minnesota, that means open early, close late, as the weather permits. Your pool pump and filtration system will keep algae from getting a foothold and spreading. So it's important you make sure you have your pump on a schedule. If the ice is gone, your water should be moving. When your pool is closed, make sure it's completely and securely covered.
If you let your chlorine levels drop or your pH rise too far and algae begins to bloom, the oxygen it produces will raise your pH levels further, reducing the effectiveness of your remaining chlorine. And before you know it, the green monster has moved in, kicked up its feet, and has started raiding your fridge.
Okay, so what do we do about it?
Then you take off the kid gloves, because it's about to get real. First, if your water is green, but you can see the bottom of your pool, it's probably an excess of copper. Another kind of problem entirely, and we'll talk about that one another time. But if it's cloudy, you've got an algae infestation. Ultimately, your goal for getting rid of it is the same as it is when you're preventing it. Balance your water. But when algae or other aggressive organic matter gets a hold of your pool, it goes into chlorine demand. Your regular application will no longer work because it's growing faster than your sanitizer can kill it. You've got to beat it down all at once, and that requires a lot, and I mean a lot of chlorine, as much as 30,000 parts per million.
You need to get really aggressive with chemicals in order to bring your water back to the point where maintenance can do its job. The difference is that while tweaking one chemical can bring a slight deviation in water balance back to normal, a full algae breakout needs to be fought on several fronts at once. All right, number one, we need to kill the live algae so it doesn't reproduce. Chlorine will do it, but depending on the size of the problem, it may need a little help.
An algicide, for instance. Common algicides employ quats or polyquats, which are ammonium salts that lower water tension and literally burst the algae cells. Another option is a copper-based algicide, which disrupts photosynthesis, preventing growth and spread, the same way an antibiotic prevents bacteria from reproducing.
Depending on your problem, you may end up using one or the other, or both. There are also algicides that are designed to work on specific kinds of algae. Today we're talking about green, but there's also blue-green, which is usually referred to as black algae. There's mustard, sometimes called yellow algae. Both of these are resistant to chlorine. Make sure you're using the proper treatment for your particular breakout. Number two, if any or all of these work, your water will get worse before it gets better. As the green and murky turns to brown and white and cloudy, you'll need to clear out the dead algae as soon as possible, or this could become a worse problem. It will begin to compost, becoming an all-you-can-eat buffet for live algae, which will bounce back even faster, demanding even more aggressive assault to bring it under control. Number three, make sure you're brushing your pool, cleaning out the filter regularly until the job is done. Remove all traces of the algae from your water. Use the right brush for your pool to prevent damage to your liner. And number four, if you've done all this and your water is still not clear, there may be other forces at work.
Phosphates can be introduced into the water from any organic source and act as a very efficient fertilizer for algae. Normally, sanitizers and oxidizers can counter this when phosphates remain under 0.1 parts per million, but occasionally there is so much of it that it uses up your free chlorine before it can act. Phosphate removers are available, but can be pricey. Check with your pool expert before you commit.
Nitrates, they work like phosphates, but get a bit trickier. Talk to your pool service expert. They're nearly impossible to remove without a partial drain.
So to recap, prevention is your best friend. Test your water frequently. If you're in the area, bring a water sample in once a week and we'll be happy to do it for you.
Keep your chemicals in balance by adding what's necessary based on the results of the test. If your water looks clean, but you have a problem keeping chlorine levels normal, ask your local pool expert to perform a demand test to see if your water needs special treatment.
If you have an outbreak, get your pH where it needs to be using a sodium carbonate mixture like BioGuard's Balance Pack 200 to raise it, or more likely muriatic acid or sodium bisulfate like BioGuard's Low and Slow to lower it to the optimal 7.2 to 7.6 range.
Shock your pool like crazy using chlorine levels as high as 30,000 parts per million. Use a pool-grade liquid chlorine or a more concentrated powder.
Finally, add a strong dose of algicide. Monitor your pool's filtration system and brush the walls to keep the dead algae circulating so your filter can get it out of your pool.
You may need to do this process a few times to fully purge your pool from a full outbreak, but keep at it and you'll be enjoying that crystal clear water soon.
We hope that this helps you understand algae a little bit better and gives you the tools you need to stay ahead of one of the most common problems and fears for pool owners everywhere. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button below and subscribe if you want to see us demystify more of the chemistry and technology and techniques that go with pool ownership.
If you're in the Minneapolis area, give us a call, 763-542-9000.
Or stop by our store at the intersection of 169 and 36th Avenue in Plymouth.
Be sure to check out our website, dolphinpool-spa.com.
Until next time, happy swimming!